I think we're sort of ready to start. So I will start by saying welcome to all of you. My name is Nicolaj Højer Nielsen, and I'm facilitating this event together with PreSeed Ventures, where we have multiple of the employees here. I can introduce them to you later. The topic of today is how to work with your board of directors. So not, well, it's a good idea, but how to maximize the value of that. And I'll do it really brief introduction to this, because there's a lot of uncertainty regarding board of directors when talked to, especially first-time founders. So board of directors is actually the formal ones who decide in a company. So you can say you have all the shareholders who typically meet once a year at a general assembly. And during that, you sort of vote for who should be the board of directors. And it's in real life, the board of directors who appoint management. And I know this can seem like a formality. If you, the founder, owns 98% of the shares, guess what? You're most likely in control of the board. But as soon as you get external investors in, they will have a say. And even though they only own 20% of your company, they might control the board of directors. So please have in mind that in a limited company, it's not the CEO who's in charge. It's actually the board of directors. And please have in mind that when we talk about board of directors, that's not the same as having an advisory board. By advisory board, I mean the classic that you gather a group of industry experts who can help you with introductions, network in general, and basically give you this social proof that you're a great company. And of course, there can be overlap, but please have in mind that advisory board has no formal roles. They don't have any decision power where you can say a board of directors has a lot of formal decision power. And if Steve Jobs was not dead, you can ask him, because that's one of the classic stories of a CEO being fired by a board of directors. So today, the focus is on board of directors, not other than formalities, but how do you maximize the value of that? And for that, we have three great speakers. We have Klarskov, CEO and Director of Talent at PreSeed Ventures. He will do an introduction just after my brief intro here, where we'll talk about what is the foundations for having a great board, also from an investor perspective. That being followed by Jesper, Valentin, Holm, who's both a former CEO and now a board member at one of the portfolio companies at PreSeed Ventures. And he will talk about how he works as a board member, but also what is the motivation to joining a startup board. And finally, we have Jonas from Airtain, who will give the founder story about what have they learned from working with boards at Airtain. So I guess we have three different perspectives. We have the investor perspective, we have the chairman perspective, and we have the founder perspective. And all that will be gathered in the Q&A we have the last quarter, where it's basically up to you to ask the questions that we should discuss. So the agenda in short, 10 minutes introduction by Mads, 15 minutes from Jesper, 15 minutes from Jonas, and then the Q&A at the end. And it's very important that you ask your questions in the Q&A. So at the bottom of the screen, you see the Q&A, and please fill in whatever question you might have. And then you can upvote both your own, if you want, but also other questions. And we'll basically use that as a guideline for the Q&A session. With this extremely brief intro, I will stop sharing my screen and give the word to Mads, who will talk a little bit about boards from an investor perspective. So, Mads.
Thank you, Nicolaj. And hello, everyone. Hello, Jonas. Hello, Jesper. Good to see you. Good to... I'm looking forward to hear your perspective. As you both know, I have worked with you on boards on different levels, so that's why I thought it was relevant to hear both your stories. Let me just give you a brief introduction to why we are so keen about working with boards at PreSeed Ventures. I have this catchy title for you, a board of directors that would move your business. I think I wrote the same on LinkedIn. I hope that's also why you're listed. First, to us, this is one of the value adds that we are most proud of. Also, one of the value adds that we are very important to say in the beginning that at PreSeed Ventures, we not only provide funding for companies, but we also provide sort of a journey and support for that journey. What we're trying to do here is really to optimize time. when you think about that, how can you optimize time? You need to have a look at the journey, have an understanding of what the pitfalls are to move ahead. One of the big remedies to crack that code is really to find a board that's complementary to the management and who can support with both experience and competencies to move the business ahead. Let me give you a short introduction to that. So this is the journey. I have shown it numerous times online. This is what we call the evolution organizations, or sort of a maturity map. It sort of breaks down in very general terms what goes on in a business. I know Jonas has seen this. He probably can see himself at some of the stages, but in any way, this is from a sort of strategic investor point of view. This is the journey that we see ahead when we invest in a company. What we try to do is really to say this is generic. Every time we make an investment in a new company, we make a sort of a tailored solution for all the companies that we talk to. That means that we try to grasp and understand what will it take for a company that we have just invested in a pre-seed stage to get to the next funding round. Typically, that would be sort of a seed round. Next from that would be an A round, so on and so forth. So we sort of we backtrack it and we break down what do you need to do that. I think it's important to realize also when you look at the different stages, I hope you can top line. That's mainly how the organization looks when we start to invest. Can you hear me because my internet connection is unstable? Is that okay, Nicolaj?
No, could you maybe take your camera off because it seems to be a little bit it's out of start.
Okay.
Perfect. Yes, perfect. Thanks.
All right. So at the top, that's how the organization normally works. That's what we see when we come in. And as the company grows in maturity, you'll see, more governance, more formalized structure towards the organization, and that's really what we try to put on top with the board as well. So just to give you an idea about board, and Nicolaj, I think you made a pretty good intro about this. You said, there's a difference between an advisory board and a board of directors. Totally agree. In our perspective, advisory boards are good, but what we're going for is formal boards. We are not looking for, so this is sort of the classic perception of what a board looks like. A lot of senior gentlemen around the table smoking cigars and not doing a whole lot of stuff. That is not what we are looking for. I think when you talk to Jonas and Jesper in a couple of minutes, they will also give you the impression that this is operational work. This is where you roll up your sleeves, you participate in strategy, you do operational tasks along the way. You really try to become a full commitment into the company and try to help them move to a next stage. So that's really how we see a board today. It's important to distinguish between an advisory board and a board. I think that the good thing about a board is that you're formally a part of the company. That means that you are responsible. There is both governance and compliance. And that really means, translated into reality, that you have both hands on the plate with the company. And that's important if you need to make decisions, because you also have to take into consideration, what does it mean to you? If you're not really connected to a company, it's very easy to say, go this way or that way. But if you also have a part of it, or you're formally connected to it, you really have to consider it your own business as well. This is what we call a complementary management team, right? So what you see on top is really what we're trying to do. We try to build a complementary management team to the CEO and the C-level team. So if we go back to this one, we can see that stage number 2 here, validation and efficiency, is all about commercialization. If you didn't know that, that's what it's all about. Normally, when we see a company first investing in, the commercial track is not necessarily the one that's full on the team. We try to find people who could do that, but we try to find people who has done the journey in a commercial sense, so that they can sort of pull the team to the next level. I think it's very important to say that what we try to do is, when we set a board, the most important part is really to find a chairman of the board that can match the CEO. That's sort of the first step towards setting a successful board. in the sense of Jonas, for example. We spent a lot of time finding a chairman of the board for him, who also a commercial profile, who's done the journey before. And then from that stage on, and this is a bit backwards, from that stage on, Jonas is chairman of the board, will also assist him in growing the company accordingly towards the journey as we go along. The board will change. This is also important. The board will change as the company matures. So for example, if you look at the left, you can see that a typical board would be a chairman. It will probably be an investor, a business angel. The investor will probably be us, and probably also an investor more. What we try to do is really to say that when we're in this pre-seed segment, we can play with the roles a bit more. We can put in a CEO profile, CPO profile. When we move to the next stage, and I can't see my screen here, and when we come to a seed stage and further, we probably see a board that will be more sort of structured around investors. So what we're trying to do is to say, when we're pre-seed to seed stage, we can play with the roles to move the company faster. But when the rounds continue and we go to a seed and an A stage rounds, it's most likely that the board of investors or the board of directors will be filled up with investors, because that's how it works in the real world. Let's see. Again, this. So just to recap very briefly, I hope to get some words from you guys. We always try to do this. We also try to start with the CEO and the chairman of the board. We try to sort of match the journey as we go along. We probably try to enter with a chairman of the board already at the pre-seed stage. And as we go along, as I said before, we put on commercial profiles, we put on marketing profiles, might even put on a financial profiles when we turn into an ARD round, because there's different perspectives from that from international syndicators, how to see that grow, and then sort of build the board as we go along. So that means that this is and this is something that we work on here at PreSeed Ventures. We always try to have a stock of candidates that we can deploy across our portfolio. That means that when you come into seed state medtech or tech or pre-seed medtech or pre-seed tech, we always have at least 150 candidates that are ready to be deployed across our portfolio that has the set of competencies that we need in order to move the business. Just to be clear, we also try to have financial R&D profiles, and definitely also commercial profiles, because we can see that these profiles are also part of moving the business ahead. So that's what we try to deploy. Okay, that's it from me.
Thanks a lot. If you could stop sharing your screen, Mads, so we can give the word to Jesper. You should unmute, yeah.
Yes, thank you. All right, thanks for inviting me for joining today. As Nicolaj introduced in the beginning, I'll just give a quick tour down my background as well as the motivation for doing board work. I will then talk about how we are working in Quest.io, how I onboarded with Quest.io, and some of the tools that we used, which has been very much around mapping critical competencies in the company and finding out where are the gaps and how do we progress. And then finally, some of the sort of the daily modus of working with Quest.io. I hope that can be an inspiration for you. So my background is in technology. I've been working with software as a service technologies, cloud technologies, but very much from a business development point of view. I'm an engineer of background, but I've been primarily deployed into the commercial parts of the businesses I've been involved in, and I have some experience with enterprise sales and growth businesses, internationalization as well. I've been starting my own companies. I've been working as a consultant and advisor, and I've been CXO in different companies. Lately, as CEO in a company called Agilic. Agilic is a Danish marketing technology company that has been quite fast growing the past couple of 3, 4, 5 years. The journey that I've onboarded with and carried out with Agilic was to get Agilic from a sort of a bootstrap stage, where a couple of funds had invested in building a product, but hadn't really succeeded in bringing that to market. So bootstrapping that up to a funding round, we chose then to IPO, but that could just as well as had been a collaboration with venture funds or PE funds. In 3 years, we grew from 10 to 80 employees. We opened offices in four countries. We went from having 10, 12 clients to having 100 clients, some very, very large enterprise clients on a European level. And we grew from being a local vendor in Denmark with a little bit of business in Norway as well, into having a global presence, so clients in the US and in Australia, throughout Europe. And at the same time maintaining a satisfying growth rate at around 50% a year. So what happens, just as Mads says, is that when you're on that journey, the skills and the experiences you need from the board of directors, that changes quite fast, because you want a board of directors which, when you sit there as a CEO, you want a board of directors that can actually help you answer some of the difficult questions that you run into. And you run into those questions on a daily basis. And you don't want a board that does not necessarily have the experience to help you out, and you do not want a board who are not deployed themselves into making this happen. And you should also realize that throughout this period of time, there should be changes as in the board, and most often also in the management team, because the needed skills change so fast. So I ended my term with Agilic just a couple of months ago, and I've now started up some other adventures, but that's not what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about the role I've taken on as chairman in Quest.io. And Quest.io is a platform, a software service platform that is used for organizational alignment when large companies are doing strategy rollouts. They are at the moment 5 people on board, 2 founders and 3 employees. They are at a stage I think you would categorize that as early seed stage, but they have throughout the last 6-8 months been grown quite fast and showing really good signs. They are in the B2B software service area, and I came in because they sort of needed a bit of assistance on how to sort of break through this enterprise sales opportunity they were facing. They are in a very interesting position because they can really take a role in this new normal post COVID-19 world that is emerging. So that's something that we're working a lot on, how to prepare ourselves for and how to position ourselves for. My motivation to do board work is first of all because I really think it's a great inspiration and motivation for me to share some of the both the scars and the successes that I've experienced throughout my work with my previous work, both in Agilic but also before that, and to see how that can help others to create and grow their businesses. Then it's of course to be inspired. It's to be up to date on what's happening. So that gives me a lot. And then the speed and the agility that you find in a startup is just really, to me, a great motivation to be part of. That gives that really makes the blood flow. And then, of course, investment opportunities is a possibility. I have invested in Quest, and just as Mads said, I think it's really important that you look for boards and chairmen that has skin in the game. So this is an interest for me as well. And then finally, to do something like what we do today, expanding my network and learn more people, learn to know more people. All right, so in Quest, what we started out with, and what I would usually use as my sort of the first thing I pull out of the briefcase would be going through a business plan and making sure that everybody's on the same page in terms of what this business is all about and what is the journey we're on. And it might sound really simple and banal, but believe me, it's not. Usually when you do this exercise, you'll find that there can be many different views on what is the task actually at hand. Where are we going? Where are we going? And why are we going there? So that's, for me, is a very good start. And just to summarize what a business plan is all about, it's about making sure that you have a mission. You know why you're doing what you're doing and where you're going. A little bit of the background, as well as defining your target market, get the positioning right, get the market conditions fleshed out, making sure that you have a value prop that is something that you can bring to market. Define your advantages as well as your weaknesses. That's really important, that you are being very, very, very honest with yourself in terms of where your advantages and weaknesses are. Getting the pricing set, as well as your marketing strategy. And finally, okay, how are you actually going to sell? How are you going to bring this to market? I know that this takes into the assumption here is that you have already a really interesting product idea, and you have a product maybe at MVP stage or maybe more matured, but you have a product that you can bring to market. So that's my assumption in this. So what this tells you is a lot about where we are today, where we are going, why we are going there, when we want to be there, etc., etc. And you can start to flesh out the actual plans from this. And then finally, you can then look at, okay, what kind of help do we need to make sure that we can progress these plans? And that is when you start being capable of doing your competency mappings. And I do this both with the management team, as well as on a board level, making sure that we have fleshed out what are the most critical competencies we need to have in the business for the next, let's say, 6 to 12 months, because that's usually sort of the time frame that we discuss in Quest. And this is an illustrative examples, but I would say it's not too far away from from reality, that we have some tasks that we need to make sure that we succeed with, and we need to make sure that we have the right set of competencies at the right level, represented both in the board as well as in the management team. And once you start to do your mapping like this, you can basically I think you can picture a map like this, which will quite clearly tell you that you have areas where you are well off, then you have areas which is a little bit shaky, and then you have areas that you really need to focus on. And then those areas becomes the number one priority for the CEO of Quest and myself to make sure that we cover. Because if we don't cover these areas, then there's a high risk that we won't succeed with the overall plan. So in Quest, my responsibility covers, of course, ensure that the strategies and the plans are established, are documented, and are well known to everybody. And when I say everybody, it's everybody in the organization, working in the organization, and it's everybody on the board. So we are all on the same page. We all know where we're going. Then on a daily basis, it's very much a working with the CEO, coach, and assist. Marie is her name, on actually deploying these strategies and these plans. And it becomes very operational, as Mads said. So mainly in Quest, it's about short-term prioritization. I'm on the phone daily with Marie, discussing how to prioritize this and that. At this stage, and also at later stages, there will always be more tasks than hands, and there will also always be a lot of opportunities that you can pursue. But focus is crucial, and that is what we are discussing on a daily basis. Then, as I said, the go-to-market piece, that we become really, 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 really focused on what is our positioning. We have our sales method in place. We have our pricing strategies in place. We can do the prospecting, and that we are growing from the right clients, because that is what is going to take Quest from where they are today into the next growth stage, and that is the overall aim of what we're doing right now. And then, of course, it's also my responsibility and task to make sure that the funding are in place for Quest to be able to deploy those strategies and plans. Making sure that the board is a catalyst for execution. The board should not be the picture Matt showed of old guys sitting around a table smoking cigars and just giving a lot of tasks to the CEO who's working 20 hours a day. That's not the idea. The idea is that the board should be a catalyst for the company to execute faster. Making sure, of course, there's sufficient funding in place, and then a network, a valuable network. Again, that's crucial at this point, and the board of directors should be able to offer that. This has been said already, to ensure that the board of directors are assessed from time to time, and if adjustment is needed, then we discuss that and we can adjust the board. And then finally, making sure that the compliance are in place, but that's not the focus, not a big focus for today. My last slide, as I said, is just to give you an idea of what is the modus, how do we work together. As I said, I work mainly with Marie, who's the CEO of Quest, because it can be a little bit confusing for the team, for the other people in the team, if I sort of come in and out all the time. So I work with and through Marie. We are, I would say, daily on the phone. We use Slack as well. Exchanging ideas, do some sparring, some mutual coaching. We share news and we discuss the daily tasks at hand and how to prioritize. Then we run regular meetings and workshops together, and sometimes we also invite externals to participate to give some more speed to the execution. And some concrete examples is that we've been working on setting a new price strategy, getting a new price list in place. So that's something where I get very much involved and get very operational. The same thing is a task we're working on is about improving the pipeline and the forecast accuracy. I have a lot of experience from previously on how you can do that. And of course, instead of Christian, the VP of sales, and Marie trying to figure this out and do a lot of trial and error, I think I can get that to progress quite faster. We do PR, we do a lot of stuff. So that's just to give you an idea of how I'm involved. We have around 8 board meetings a year. So that's the official ones, but we have, I would say, ongoingly unofficial board meetings, either the full board or parts of the board, where we discuss various topics. Again, all about how can the board be a vehicle for the company to grow faster and to progress faster. All these meetings are mutually prepared by Marie and myself and led by us. So that's something that we collaborate on as well. That is what I have prepared. And if I haven't covered what you were hoping to get an answer for, please ask the question in the Q&A. Oh, my last point. We used, just to give you an idea about the tools we use to collaborate. As I said, it's Slack. Of course, it's phone, email. We have a mutual Google Doc where we share the documents we're working on, and then we use Trello to have a project board that we can where we can see the progress. Quite simple, very easy, very efficient. Thanks.
Perfect, Jesper. Thanks. Right on time. If you could stop sharing your screen, and then we'll give the word to Jonas, who will give his founder perspective on this.
Yes, thank you, Nicolaj. Hello, everyone. Thanks for taking the time. Let's see if I can live up to the expectations. So my approach to this is try to be as practical as possible and write out some of our learnings. So it's maybe also easier to go back and take a look at the slides and the recording and get be reminded of some of the learnings or some of the things that we fucked up with. It's also part of it, right? So first of all, I'm Jonas from Airteam, and very, very quickly we started the Airteam in 2013. We launched the first product on the market in 2015. We have 4 offices, HQ here in Copenhagen. We're 80 people now, 30 different nationalities. We lead the education space in North America. North America is our biggest market, and especially education, we have a very strong fit. We focus on getting these professional screens easier to use for all stakeholders. So we have three main product categories, so to speak. We focus on that you can wirelessly screen share from any device up to a bigger screen or multiple screens. You can load KPI dashboards, presentations, videos on all screens that are not, being presented to. So where you're not actively present in a classroom or meeting room. Could be for the sales department or hallways in schools, lecture plans and lunch plans and whatnot, right? And you can control it all from the cloud. So the content running on the displays, all the settings, you can also, set when screens should turn on in the beginning of the day and off at the end of the day, and things like that. So that's very, very short about Airteam. And then I have, since that is the theme of today, our diversity first board of directors. So here you have the four gentlemen that help Airteam out. Lars Jensen, he's the chairman, managing partner at Scale Capital. Lars Tinggaard, he used to be CEO of Milestone Systems for more than 20 years, recently retired to focus on Airteam, as I say at least. And then Richard, as you probably know from PreSeed Ventures, and Tommy Andersen. So that is the current board of Airteam. I have chosen to focus our learnings and categorize them in three main overall themes. So there is getting started, there is the board meeting, and there is the outside the boardroom. And in terms of getting started, very, very practically, just get started. I think it's also very easy to overthink what a board should look like, and you want the perfect, group of people and all of that. And bear in mind that it is a flexible organ. It is something you can adjust over time. So my suggestion and learning is just get started. And also, very, very obviously, you need to have a board to maximize the value of the board, right? So just get started. Chairman is a good place to start, but just try it out and take the learnings from there. That is how we did it. If you have some more time, and if you maybe take a step back and look at your current board of directors, Mads also touched upon this a little bit, but a good approach is to start looking at what kind of organization should we have to accomplish the goals of the company, and what's the organizational structure of that, and then try to mirror that in the board of directors. So each large department is represented in terms of skill set in the board of directors. And one of my learnings is think through upfront if the person that you bring on board is so-called like a more permanent fit, or if that's a more temporary 12 to 18 months fit for product launch or whatever you like, whatever you're going through, right? And if it's the latter, I suggest that you be upfront about it, because you can avoid some awkwardness and some frustration and some maybe annoying conversations. I've tried that, where it's like, okay, you should join our board, and then I actually kind of knew that this was going to be a 12 months thing until we were past a certain milestone, and I should have been upfront about that. I didn't burden the bridge completely, but I might as well have. So if possible, be upfront about the expectation for the journey, the milestones to be completed, and how long you expect that to take with each board member. And then my learning is very much that you should value time over the personal brand value when you choose your board members. In some way, it's obvious to state, but you quickly, and I've tried that also, get caught up in how cool could our slide of board of directors be when we send to investors, and don't fall for that trap, because you need the board much more than a pretty slide. So they should be able to dedicate time to help steer the company, prioritize, make decisions, as the guys have also touched upon. So that's getting started. Then we have the board meetings and some practical learnings on that. I suggest that you set up a yearly cadence. Could be like 6 to 8 meetings a year with at least placeholder themes, so you know pretty much what, when you're talking about, you know, go to market or strategy revisit, budget, and so forth, right? So you have an overview of the year, and then, you know, just book all the members, because that can also be frustrating to spend time on getting the calendars to actually fit. So maybe just get that done beginning of the year. And it also helps you operationally to plan, you know, okay, we need to be prepared and we need to have some workshops and present updated go-to-market plan and at the board meeting in whatever, September. And you can align accordingly with that. Very practically as well, give them a call before each meeting. So typically we send out the material like 2-3 days in advance. And I typically phone everybody and say, like, do you have any, you know, should I catch you up on something? Do you have some questions to some of the slides? It helps save time in the meeting, and it also helps me to come up with another slide, or there's a follow-up that everybody asked about that was not clear. And instead of spending 20 minutes going through it in the meeting, I can just have another slide on it at the meeting. So it's a good way to, you know, fill the gap and you know, iron out a few things before the meeting, so you can focus the conversation on I think the more important issues, instead of clarifying this and that. And then it's a good, you know, way to get an understanding of you know, if you need to come out with an updated forecast, or you know, fire an executive or something like that. I find that it's good to know where each member stands before each meeting, to kind of steer the conversation a little bit easier in the meeting. So I also use it as that. Then I suggest that you share read-only update as part of the board material. I think, you know, the first many years we spend the majority of the time in our meetings on the status part, you know, catching people up on this is what happens with this, and this has happened with, and you know, nobody really gets anything out of that, and it's a boring meeting. So so really attack up front that it's not a status meeting. You know, so call them, send them a read only, and then unless there's any questions, you skip the status part and you dive into the topics that you need to go through, right? So because else it's yeah, it quickly turn into, okay, where are we with this? Where are we with that? And it's not, that's not at least how you maximize the value. Make sure to take very clear, actionable minutes. This also is pretty obvious, but it just helps everyone with what exactly do we need also after the board meeting from each member. Because you need to maximize the value when you have, prior to the board meetings, when you have the board meetings, but also afterwards. What do you need as a founder, people to follow up on? I need you know, the chairman to send me I don't know, a contract for distribution, or you know, some shit like that, or whatever the case may be. And the more clear and you know, actionable the minutes are, the better help you get out of it. And then I typically follow up straight after, you know, this is the action items. I need this from you, that from you, and you needed me to send you know, an update on this or whatever. So just get that out of the way immediately when people are also, you know, fresh in their minds about what actually did we talk about in the meeting. That's typically a good way to get things to happen afterwards as well. And then we aim to do, you know, process reviews. So we each have a responsibility to have better board meetings. So that could be a question like, you know, rate the meeting from between 1 to 10, and just to touch base on, are people actually dropping out? Board members can also be pretty busy sometimes. So if the phone is starting to come up and, you know, there's emails going on, you're probably off topic, or there's something you need to catch up with somebody about offline, or there's too much status going on, or whatever the case may be. So try to attack the process a little bit as you go along, and aim to have and understand at least how to have good board meetings for all the members. Also, you as a founder, right? You should also rate what you get out of it, right? Outside the boardroom, also give them a call, ask them for, again, concrete help. The more concrete you can be, and the more they know what's going on. So instead of catching them up before each board meeting, it's easier to just catch them up every now and then. Jesper mentioned daily, but it could be weekly, right? So they know a little bit about what's going on, and then ask for concrete help, and especially if it's easy for them. Like, how did you structure your extended leadership, team, or something that is, they have been through it and it's very easy to give an answer for them, or send a contract or something, right? That's an easy way to get help, at least I find. Then the board can also be played as a card in negotiations, where you want to maintain the relationship. So I've used that quite a lot. So instead of that, I go, I don't agree to that, I can't agree to that, I'll just say, the board will never agree. And then I look like the good cop here, and I still want to, maintain the relationship, so I blame the board. You heard that from me. So I find that it works pretty well. You can also delegate some of the strategic initiatives to either the chairman and other members. So it could be fundraising related. You can't expect them to go and raise money for you, but they could maybe, help work the investor, the broader investor group, if there's any questions or follow-ups. It could also be, in relation to this whole Corona situation, through Vex Fund, you can get some matching loans, and there's an application process. So we have outsourced some of that. Could also be recruiting-wise, when you hire executives, if you can get the board member to participate in the recruiting process, and help with their learnings and help screen people even. So, you can actually delegate as a CEO and management team to some of the board members when it comes to some of these strategic initiatives. So you get more hands with certain topics, or at least the opportunity to have that. Very obvious as well, but at the same time very important. Invest in the group, like socialize. Don't only keep it in the board meeting. Make sure that you celebrate also wins together, and make sure that the members, they get to know each other. Because maybe they, names are being, okay, I know this person, but I've never worked with him or her. So make sure that they get to trust each other, because the more trust there is, the better the conversation in the board meeting, I typically find, right? And it makes it a little bit more fun if it's not too formal in the meetings. And that's also my last item. You should be professional. It is a formal way, and it is an organ that helps make decisions, tough decisions. They could kick me out in some way. So yes, you need to be professional, but you should have fun, and don't overthink it, take it too seriously either, with the result that you just postpone it forever, and it never happens, right? Most of them are humans like us, I find. So I think that is my last point here. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Jonas. Right on time. Yeah, I was muted. Sorry. So we now go to the Q&A, and I think the first one I've sneak peeked a little bit, and I can see that for sure the highest rated one is regarding compensation. So basically, how do you compensate your board member for all that? And maybe I would like to start with Mads, because you have this broad view from really early cases to late cases. Could you give your insights on how you see compensation? Basically, what do people do, but also what do you see works?
Yes, and I think it's a super good question, because as you know, and some of you are founders, some of you are watching, cash is not something that you are sort of really stuck up on in the beginning. I get a lot of inbound contacts from people who want to join boards. As Jonas and Jesper just said, there's a couple of gates that they need to go through. first off, they need to realize that they have to spend really much time and be operational with these companies. But they also need to realize, as you know, in opposition to the picture I showed you with the great guys with the great cigars, this is not something that you get rich from doing. You know, this is something you can put on your resume, and if you stay with the company long enough, you might be, you know, deemed valuable for some kind of equity deal or bonus or something like that. But this is not something that you can make a living on. So I'd say, you know, pre-seed segment, it's a great opportunity to come in and do some great work with people. You might be able to negotiate an equity deal, and that would sort of be your salary. That would be your ticket to maybe, if you stick to the company and help them grow accordingly along the way, somewhere down the line, as with the rest of us, you'll collect your fee in that.
Mads, could you be a little bit more specific in terms of what kind of warrant program do you see? Is it 1-2% you see for a chairman in a pre-seed, or basically? So you have yeah.
So normally, and I have heard horrendous deals out there. So that's not what we do here. I really recommend that you start out by trying to see if there sort of is the commitment is right and the chemistry is right, you know, with the CEO and the chairman. And then after sort of a due diligence period of 6 to 12 months, it can be that long. I say if it's 12 months, you're probably not going to be the right candidate. But somewhere in between that, you start talking about, you know, how can you, do you want to invest? We often see our chairman of the board go in and put a small ticket in a round just to have the plates on. They get a good deal on that. That could be part of it. But also we see sort of equity sizes, everything between 0.5% and up to 2.5%. You know, vested over a vast amount of years. Not just something you get on the spot, but something you get when you perform right. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Makes sense. Yes, but maybe I can have your perspective, because it also comes down to your motivation, right? So when you go into a relatively early deal, and don't worry, I'll not ask about your compensation packet, but basically what drives you? Is that also to get a part of a warrant program, or, you know, how do you see, you know, what works for you?
Yeah, I very much echo what Mads just said. I fully appreciate that that cash is not something you want to spend on a board. Cash is something you want to spend on growing your business. So that's not something we discuss at all. My main motivation is still, as I said, first of all, that I can actually assist a business at this stage, when we're talking this early stage companies, create and establish a business and starting to grow that business. So that's my main motivation. If there's an opportunity to invest, I would be very interested in that as well. And then I think, again, as Mads said, when I've been now take Quest as an example, we've been working together for 8 months now, I believe. You know, it's 5-6 months down the road, we sort of have a feeling on both sides. Is this something that we can continue for a longer period of time? And then get a warrant program of some sort in place, which is glued tightly with what's the interests of the management team. So again, as Mads said, warrants are being, I get warrants, and those are vested and matured as I perform and the company performs, and we reach the milestones, etc., etc. So that component as well. So it's those three components. It needs to be motivating and inspiring. There might be an investment opportunity, and then you can look into a warrant program as well.
Yeah, Jonas, maybe you can share your insights. I know that, of course, now that just maybe you should just also explain that to the audience, because normally when you have investors on board, investors' own board members, you don't compensate that, right? So when PreSeed put in a board member, that board member does not receive compensation. So you sort of have these two different groups. You have the investor representatives who are compensated by the shareholder in the company, and then you might bring in external board members like Jesper. But maybe Jonas, you can share a little bit from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, just very quickly, if you talk to people that want cash compensation in like the startup phase, I would see that as a red flag. I would say we shouldn't waste time on this. Like that's C20, like Carsten Dybvad that gets like 3.8 million maybe now, or some shit like that. So I wouldn't touch that. I want people to be incentivized by the journey. So that's why the warrant instrument is a good thing, that they prove that they can deliver value over time, and as they do, they vest warrants and they have an upside at a certain exit point, right? So that would be my main way to compensate. And then I would also flip it around and say, like, people that say, okay, what do I get out of it? How much do you want to pay me? I would say, how much do you want to invest? So like those two things.
Yeah, I can also share my own perspective. I think Mads also touched upon that. There's a big difference between a board member and chairman, right? So a chairman has, and it's something I learned relatively late, but has much more work than the other ones. It's not just a formality between the board members and the chairman. So the chairman or chairperson typically have the role which Jesper explained, which is about, really hands-on work together with the CEO, where the other members typically have less work, or it's much more ad hoc. And I think that should also be reflected in the compensation. So both for warrants, but also later on, if you have cash compensation, there is typically much more for the chairperson, for the simple fact that that person has much more work. Maybe we should go to the next question, which is about the stage of a board of directors. And again, I would like to start with Mads. Mads, what is your view? You meet a potential pre-seed deal. Do you prefer they have a board? Do you prefer they don't have a board? Or don't you really care that early? Could you share a little bit about what stage you think?
So what I think it's easier to sort of comment on what we normally see. We normally see that as I showed, that the organization in the beginning at a pre-seed stage is probably pretty informal. So when that's informal, setting a board, doing that very formal is not something that we see very often. They might have advisory boards, as you start talking about. They have someone in their network that's connecting them, helping them with stuff, and so on. I think that when we see them in the beginning, the first thing we do when we make a pre-seed investment, that's before product market fit, that's before full MVP, we help them assist setting a board right away. So, and that might be that we take people from their network. They come, they recommend people they've been working with for a couple of years who's been assisting them and helping them. We try to help them formalize that organ in reality, so that's sort of our baseline to start. So that means that, so first off, we don't see that much formal boards, but as soon as we make the investment, we start setting the board in place in order to get some traction right away.
Yeah. Jonas, when did you create a board at Airtime, and was it from the beginning, was it later, and do you have any insight from that process?
In short, it was what Mads explained. So PreSeed Ventures came in along with Tommy Andersen, and those Richard and Tommy joined the board. So that's that was how we got started. So we the focus was actually to get investment, and that's what kickstarted the board.
And when was the first external board member who was not representing, you could say, directly an investor? Was that Lars Thinggaard, who you now have, or have you had other external board members in before that?
Before that, yeah, they're not part of the board anymore. So I think the first one was probably in 2016, external. Yeah.
Cool. Maybe Jesper, there's also a question here regarding whether an advisory board membership could be seen as a first step towards a more formal board of directors. So if I ask you, so basically if a startup asks you and you think it's interesting, in could an advisory role be a starting point for you, or how do you see that process?
Absolutely. I would say when I'm approached, I would always be quite honest with myself and with the business on what I can offer and what I can't offer, and try to map that to the situation or the position the company is in. And if I can if I can bring value from an advisory board position, that could be an opportunity for sure. and that could or could not lead into a board positions. That's not necessarily sort of a requirement for my part. Again, it's for me, it's very much about what I know, what I can do, what I know I'm good at. Is that something that can be deployed and can help the business to grow faster and become a sort of execute better on the plans.
Yeah. And what's the best way if someone think, oh, Jesper could be a good fit? What's the best way to approach it? Is it to send you a little bit information about the company and the challenges they're having and invite you for coffee? Is it sort of what would work for you?
Yeah, so reach out, LinkedIn, phone, email, whatever. Let's have a conversation. To me, we will quite fast come into looking into a product, discussing how is the fit between a market and a client and the product. What would be the characteristics of a sort of a key client? That's always where I start. What are the opportunities for growing the product, the portfolio, and how does that match how we see the market is developing? So that would, I would say, after 10 minutes, that would be the conversation we would be having. So that's where to start. Yeah,
I can also share. I think there's a question both to you and me about what should they do. I share your insight there. It's about, again, if we take the basis that this is not for the monetary reward right now, right? Because there's a big difference between late stage companies where you actually get 100,000 of kroner a year, so you can say, hey, I don't care about the bonds. But for me, I basically think like if I was an investor in this company, right? Because the value for the time spent would be, I believe that has a fair chance of reaching to a point, and then I can see at the value. So I would basically just share your comments there. There's also
a question. Can I add a couple of things, Nicolaj, very quickly?
Sure.
I think for our latest board member is Lars Tinggaard, and sometimes you also need to sell people extremely hard on joining, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes I read his book, I pitched him on like why and dove into why is Lars a really good fit, why is Milestone a really good fit for Airteam, and what are the overlaps. So there was a lot of preparation into making him aware of there's some really good learnings that he can bring to Airteam, and there's a lot of similarities, so he can deploy a lot of his knowledge in Airteam.
Yeah.
So I think that would be one thing. Another thing associated to what we talked about, sometimes you can also recruit people to the board of directors with, to lure them in and then maybe hire them as an executive. We tried that, we failed, but I know other people have tried that. So you get people associated with the company a little bit more high level, but it's actually with the purpose of hiring them full time at a later point. So that was just two quick comments.
Good points. Here's a question regarding, well, it's mandatory for an investor to join a board. No, it's not. But I will have to say the more later stage investors you have, seed and venture rounds, they always or almost always have the requirement to join the board. So again, you should have in mind there's sort of two things, right? They are when seed or pre-seed enters into a seed round or whatever, I'll guess you will require a board position. And then you have the external representative.
And I kind of comment briefly on that, because I think I rushed it a bit in the beginning, but that was mainly the point about this, how to use it as an instrument. It's very clear to us that in the beginning, where there's not a lot of institutional international investors around the table, it's easier to sort of pick and choose and to have the board. To set the board as you will, sort of getting the traction first in the maturity role. What happens later on when you get into a seed or an A round is that it becomes more like a vehicle for international investors to catch up on the business, and that means that the playing time is sort of over. It's a more formal board. The role is different. There's a lot of money involved at that stage, and what they mainly look for is really to see if their investment is keeping the right track. So it's a different game. So there's a very big difference of pre-seed and after seed boards. I think it's very important to remember.
Totally agree. We are unfortunately out of time. I'll just spend 10 seconds on promoting that you can actually get more detailed feedback, not a pitch, but feedback here in June 23rd from some investment managers at PreSeed or myself. You can apply at PreSeedAacademy.dk. And we have the next talk on June 25th about nailing fundraising, which you can also sign up at PreSeed Academy. So time is up. I'll first thanking a lot to both Jesper, Mads, and Jonas for taking the time to share their insights here. You'll all get a link to the recording and the slides afterwards. And I'll just wish you all a fantastic day. Thank you.